Material made out of three main components: shader, textures, and mapping. In this lesson, we will focus on textures. Welcome to the woodworking workshop. Today, we will polish a piece of furniture in a restored style. It is our duty to create wood material for the chair, but the settings in the shader will give us only a very basic look. The most effective way to create a detailed, rich material is by using textures. Another way to edit material is in the shader editor. We have it ready in the workspace tabs, up here, called shading. Working in the shader editor gives us greater flexibility to combine different shaders, textures, and calculations. Let's get used to the idea of using nodes. Nodes are like Lego pieces. Each one is a component that you can use to assemble the complete material. The same values that we learned to play with in the material lesson can be seen here under the node of the principal BSDF: color, metallic, roughness, transmission, and more. You will see that those are the same values that we edited in the previous lesson from the properties editor, and they are synced to each other. In the shader editor, we can move in the 2D space with the same shortcuts we already know. Middle mouse button to move, and with the mouse wheel we can zoom in and out. We can move the node anywhere we want by pressing it on the top part and dragging. On the right we have the node output. Note that the reading direction of the nodes is from left to right. In our case, we have the principal BSDF, which is a shader node connected by a green connection to the output node. If we disconnect it, you will see that our object is no longer affected by light. We will reconnect between them by dragging from the output of the principal BSDF node to the input of the surface of the material output. This node has no output, only an input because it's the end of the chain. We can add more nodes. In the Add menu, the nodes are divided into subcategories. Let's go to the Textures category and choose Image Texture node. The node we created is attached to our cursor until we select a place for it by clicking the left mouse button. We have a texture node, but it is empty. Click Open. The Blender file browser will open up for us, and we can find images in the folder we have attached in our course files. We downloaded the textures from the polyheaven.com website, which offers a variety of textures for different materials completely for free, and which can be used for any purpose. The Textures Maps folder attached to the lesson files has a folder called Wood. Select a file named Wood Diffuse. Maps with the name Diffuse represent the material color. In order for the texture to affect the object, we need to connect the Image Texture node to the nodes chain. Let's connect the output of the color from the texture and drag it to the input of the base color in the principal BSDF node. We immediately got an effect on the color. If before we could only choose a single color, now we have a variety of colors. But color alone will not give us the feeling that this is a convincing material. Using textures in other parameters of the shader will help it understand how it should react to light, thus giving a more diverse sense of our material. The folder contains different textures with the name of the correct channels. This time, let's drag the image straight from the folder in our operation system. Drag the roughness. Clicking on the texture node will show us textures in the image editor window. The black and white texture of the roughness describes where the material is matte and where it is shiny. The material already feels more convincing. The shininess appears in the areas that makes more sense for wood, emphasizing the grooves and bumps on the surface, unlike uniform roughness across the entire surface. You may have noticed that we have different types of inputs between nodes. They differ in color from one another. Yellow is color, a 4-channel RGBA. Red, green, blue, and alpha. Gray is a float, 1-channel, black and white. Purple is a 3-channel vector, X, Y, and Z. And green is the information of the shader itself. There are conversions between types of inputs that are simple. For example, the yellow output of the color turned gray at the input of the float, which is a single channel. In the case of the roughness, you can see that the image is a black and white one, so it uses only one channel of color. But even if there were color, as in the case of the diffuse, the color would turn black and white as soon as it transitioned from yellow to gray. If we try to connect the output of the shader to the purple vector of the texture, you can see the transition is not possible, and the connection becomes red to signal this. There are also cases that require conversion. We will use a texture we call normal map. We will bring it from the folder, and we will connect it. Things look strange now. Apparently, the conversion works and the connection is not red. Normal map is a slightly strained textures in purplish colors, which represent directionality. This texture will tell lighting to illuminate the material's details as if they were modeled. Every texture is a color. After all, it's a colored image. But in the case of normal maps, we will have to help the shader figure out what to do with the color. A node that will help us translate the color into a channel of actual vector, RGB to XYZ. In the Add menu, we have a category of Vector, and there we will find the node Normal Map. You will see that it has a color input and a vector output. Check this out. You can put the node on the connection wire, and it will be connected in the middle between two of them. Nice. Looks better, but there is one more thing we need to do in the case of the normals texture, and that is to change the decoding of the colors in the color space to non-color. That way, the texture won't get any color manipulation that interfere in the case of the normal map, which is usually beneficial to us in the case of color textures. See how the texture interacts with light now. If for a moment we cut off the texture from the color, you will see how much of the sense of the materiality does not come from the color at all. Nice, we have a wood material. Now it's the time to give it a clear name at the top of the editor. Note that from here you can replace, copy, and create new materials, just like in the Properties editor, like we did in the previous lesson. We have the materiality of wood, but that's not enough to sell the illusion that we have a restored piece of furniture here. We also need some peeling paint here and there. Shall we go to an external program and edit the image? Nah. A huge advantage of working with nodes is our ability to manipulate textures directly from here. Let's briefly get to know some effective nodes. In the same category of textures we have used, you may have noticed that there are several other types of texture that are not image-based. What does it mean? That they are mathematical textures, what we call in the professional jargon, generative. Let's select the nodes texture node and connect it directly to the material output to see the texture clearly, without the effects of light from the shader. We have a few parameters here that we can play around with, like size and the detail level of the texture. We have the option to get a color channel or a single channel, black and white. I want to mix the two texture like I would if I used an image editing software, like Photoshop or similar softwares. We have a node under the color section called Mix Color. It gives us an output of color, an input of two color channels, and a gate that is responsible for switching between them. Let's connect both the wood and the noise. If we slide the factor to 0, we will get the image connected to A. If we slide the factor to 1, we will get the image that is attached to B. Great, but what if we want a coat painting for the wood? Let's use the mix node in a different way. We will disconnect the noise texture and choose a color for the wood coat. Let's say blue. Now the factor switches between blue and the wood texture. What we need in the current situation is a mask. One that will decide where there is wood and where is the blue paint. That's almost what the factor does. We can also put texture into the channel of the factor and create masking of where to show A and where to show B. We will connect the single output channel of the noise to the single input channel of the factor in the mix node. Not much seems to have happened, but that's only because we have too many grays in our mask. To solve this, we will use a node called Color Ramp. It can be found in the section of Converter. Let's edit between the noise output and the factor input. We have two markers here that represent the range of grays in our picture. If we compress them closer together, we can see the effect. If we connect the output of the color ramp directly to the material output, we have blacks and whites here, whose transitions are sharp. If we space out the markers in the color ramp node again, you will see that we have a wider range of grays. Having figured this out, let's plug everything back in, including the shader to the material output. Now it's time to play with the noise parameters again until we find something we like. I would love the roughness part of the paint to be different from the wood. We can use the same trick with the mix here as well, but let's use an already existing function of the shader, and that is the coat, that gives extra coating to the material. We will connect our mask to the weight of the coat, and now we can control the roughness of the coating separately. Fantastic! I will leave the seat padding work to you. There is already material on it. Use the textures in the folder called Fabric and explore the two nodes we left for you, brightness contrast and hue saturation, in order to give the seat fabric the feeling that certain areas of the fabric have already lost their saturation over the years. To sum it up, we know how to work in a node environment, understand the flow of work with textures, and have even been exposed to the procedural texture. In the following lessons, we will learn all about the other elements that will complete our materials to be the best of the best. See you in the next lesson.